welcome back to my channel. I'm Sage if this is your first time here, and over here I do Jesus related content, healing content, fasting content, all things to help you improve your life with God, I guess. I'm still working on this intro, okay? But I have a whole bunch of content that I do that is God related. And so this part of the series is called Raw Conversations. And I started this simply so that I can just set myself free of all the things that I've been holding into for up to the last 25 years. Since I was 5 years old, I have just been holding in a lot of this trauma, not wanting to talk about it. Just, if I tuck it in the back of the closet, ain't nobody gonna know, you know? But I know, my soul knows, and I created this to heal, and by doing this, I hope other people can heal by hearing my story. I'm not necessarily here to give advice, I'm just telling my story. But if I have advice to give, I will. You know, it's one of those, just so you can get to know me, so you know you're not alone. If you've been through what I've been through, to open your eyes. If you could never imagine someone going through certain things like this it's just one of those things, okay? So with that being said, I will be talking about my experience with domestic violence, growing up in a house with domestic abuse, and then also getting into a relationship with domestic abuse. And I was gonna say minor and try to like sugarcoat it, but domestic abuse is abuse, okay? Abuse is abuse. Domestic just means within the home. So abuse is abuse. So I think that's what messed me up a long time, because I didn't realize that I was being abused, because I thought what abuse looked like was what my mom and my dad went through. So I'm gonna go through both, and yeah, we'll see how this goes, okay? Okay, y'all, let's pray. Okay. Heavenly Lord, thank you so much for bringing us all together and just allowing me the strength and the confidence to talk about the subject that we are talking about today. I ask that whoever ears needs to hear this, hears this, Lord, and whoever is rejecting this, that you soften their heart to open up to maybe some of the traumas that they've dealt with, that they've pushed in, that they've pushed back, that you just open up everyone's hearts who may be doing these things to their partners and maybe committing these heinous acts against their partners, that you soften their hearts so that they can see the error of their ways and begin to love and cherish and care for their family and their home and their spouse. And I pray that if anybody has gone through this, that you allow them to heal and you allow them to understand that everybody makes mistakes. And it's not their fault that people make mistakes. It's not their fault when they can't control a situation, but the situation that they can control is to get help. There is help everywhere, and you cannot be too afraid to go and get help, because your faith has to be strong enough. You have to know that if you are strong enough to ask for help, God is powerful enough to give it to you. And he will give it to you with the protection of all his angels, so that you don't have to deal with that situation. No one deserves to deal with that. Someone beating on you and doing all these things to you, that's not love. That's their trauma that they're inflicting on you, and you do not deserve it. Please, Lord, whoever needs to hear my words, let them hear those words, because I know you allowed me to say that for somebody. And I pray for their freedom, and I pray for their breakthrough today in Jesus' mighty name. No one can take that from them. No one. Let them lift your name up high and trust in you to get out of their bad situation, Lord. In Jesus' name we all pray. Amen. Also, I want to say this is your trigger warning. We're talking about abuse, domestic abuse, violent things. I'm not going to say every violent event. I'm just going to list one key event or two key events from each situation, and then how it impacted, stuff like that, just because we don't need to be here all that. Like one event, 2 events is enough to know this is what was going on all the time, right? Right. Okay. But okay, so my experience with domestic violence, I was gonna say domestic abuse, domestic violence, domestic disturbance, because sometimes I call it D&D or DD, domestic disturbances. So my experience with that started at home between my dad and my mom, watching the domestic violence between them. So my dad's this tall guy, my mom's like me, you know, a little bit, well, at the time she was probably like as chunky as I am right now. And my dad is like 6'1", always been kind of stocky type guy, and he was an alcoholic. They kind of both were, if we're honest, but he would get violent more so than not. And the first thing that I remember about this, the first time I ever remember like something ain't right, like something's off, like I don't think this is how it's supposed to be done. He came in and my mom was cooking on the stove. I don't remember what she was making or anything like that. I just know the stove, the fire on the stove was on and she was cooking. And he came in there, you know, and he's like clearly drunk. I didn't know he was drunk at the time. I just thought Dad was like this sometimes. Like, I just thought at some point during the day, he just gets like this, you know? Like, I didn't realize what drinking and getting drunk and all that stuff was at this point. I was about 4 years old or so. This was right before we moved to that house where all of my sexual abuse happened with the babysitter. It was right before that. If you didn't check out that video, go check that video out. So it was right before we moved there. So I just remember like him like trying to kiss on her and stuff, and she's just like, no, I'm not in the mood, I'm cooking, like get away from me, you stink, like, you know, basically just shutting him down. And I'm just like what is going on? Like, what's happening? Like, are they mad at each other type of thing? And he took her into the room, like she's like not in front of the kids or whatever, so he takes her to the room. We don't see them again for like 2 hours. Like 2 hours. Okay, I don't know what was happening. I know now, then I didn't know. Like, he was raping her. Like, that's what was happening, you know? And to think back on what I was hearing now, I'm just like, oh my goodness. You know, I did not know that. So if you a man and you think just because you married or you get drunk and you're horny that your wife is entitled to give you some, she's not. Okay? She's not. It's not just, she's not. Anyways, so that happened, yeah, and I remember that specifically because the food was burning. And I was like, what do I do? So luckily I knew how to turn off the stove. It took me a couple tries because I kept turning it up and then I turned it off. And that is like a core memory because I was afraid I was getting ready to burn the house down. So at 4 years old. So that was the first like experience with that, besides like watching him give my brother a whooping and stuff. Like, I didn't really get a lot of whoopings because I didn't like that. I didn't like people hitting on me, you know. So I didn't get a lot of whoopings, but I did witness him give my brother a lot of whoopings. And I'm like, that don't look fun at all. Like, I know that ain't fun, because when I did get whooped, I was just like, and I didn't feel like it was very deserving to the degree of whooping that I got most of the time. So I was trying to just be straight and narrow all the way, right? So that was the very first experience that I could remember with that. And then my second experience with that is another one that was just super traumatic to me, because I won't say I tried to kill my dad, but I definitely want him to get off of her. So it's not a laughing matter, but just thinking about it right now, how dangerous that was for me to bring a knife into the situation while he's doing all that. He could have stabbed her to death. Like, what? But I don't think he knew that I had that knife on me or whatever. Anyways, let me tell you guys about the story. Let's get into it. I'll tell you about it because I already told you all the details, right? So this is how it started. So my dad, so my mom and my dad got married, I want to say when she was pregnant with my brother, because in her wedding photo, she's pregnant. If I can remember if I have the mental capacity to go through all of those pictures, I will find the picture of her pregnant on the wedding day. If not, it's not gonna be in this video. Sorry, not sorry, okay? But so they got married. They were married for however long. I was not born yet. But apparently, the month that I was supposed to be born, me and my mom birthday is in July. I'm 3 days after her. The month I was supposed to be born, July 4th, right? And I know this because they tell me all the time. Like, I'm gonna tell you, okay. July 4th, my father made an official relationship with his mistress, a married man. 2 kids at this point, because I'm just a couple days from being born. Is in a relationship with another woman while your wife is at home. Exactly. So my mom, drug addict, you know, my dad probably was too, I don't know, but I know my mom's story, okay? She did heroin, and she had gave that up when she was pregnant with me. But when she found out about all the stuff about what my dad was doing behind her back while she over here sick as a dog, pregnant with me, getting ready to have me, a couple days, you know what I mean, on a holiday. You ain't home on this holiday so you can do fireworks with your son because you over there with her and her son. So my mom went back to what she knows and how to get rid of her trauma, which was drugs and alcohol. So she smoked up. I guess heroin is smoke up too. You know, she smoked her weed, she smoked her heroin, she drank her drink. So she did that. So when I was born, I was addicted to heroin when I was born. And so they almost took me from her. Thank God for grandparents, right? So that was that. And that's how this fight starts. That's why I have to say all that, because this has been going on for years before this point. This woman and my dad, they were living together, okay? And so this is what reminded me, and I just felt like it was my fault for saying something, because we went to visit my dad once, and I came home, and the woman was there, you know, the woman was there, sleeping in the same bed, doing all the things that he did when he came to our house, you know. And so I was really confused on why my dad wasn't living with us in the first place. I'm like, why other people dads live with them, but he ain't living with us, you know? One of the reasons, the abuse. It's a whole bunch of things. So why, okay? But he was not living with us. He would come and go as he pleased. And so one day I asked my mom, I said, when we got back home, I said, Mom, why does beep, 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 I don't want to say her name or nothing like that, but I'm like, why does she sleep, like, why does she live with dad and we don't? Like, why does dad live there and not here? And she was like, what are you talking about? You know, I guess she didn't know that they lived together. You know, I knew he had told her they weren't together, whatever the lies. But first of all, if you married and y'all don't live together, there's a lot of reasons why that wouldn't happen. But for the most part, if you marry and y'all don't live together, that's a red flag, okay? Y'all should at least be living together. I understand business trips and going away and doing all that type of stuff, but the intimacy should be there. One of y'all should be visiting each other frequently if y'all gotta live in separate places frequently, okay? That's what my baby mama and her husband do. That's what they do, okay? So anyways, I went home and I asked my mom that. So basically, I blew it all up. I blew his cover. I told my mom what was going on over there, and I did not know that she didn't know. I was just like 5. I was just asking. I was just like, why do we gotta go to daddy's house? Why don't he just live here? Like, why don't daddy just live with us like a normal family. And that's when she was like, oh, you don't say. You don't say. He lived where? With who? Doing what? And so he came to our house a couple days later, I want to say. Like a couple days later, he came over to like spend the night, do whatever he normally does. But my mama wasn't having it. So she opened the door, saw it was him, and like walked away or whatever. And she told us not to let him in. But my brother let him in because he was afraid. He was like, Daddy ain't about to give me no whooping. I'm gonna let him in, okay? So she let him in. He was already obviously drunk. I don't know why he liked to show up drunk. I have rarely saw my daddy sober unless he slept there and woke up. And he still wasn't even sober at that point, okay? But a fight started like almost immediately. Like they were just going back and forth, and my mom's just like not having it. So she goes into the bathroom. So yeah, and I remember that. Like I remember that fight starting because she said, well, why don't you go to your beep beep, you know? And I'm just like looking like, oh, she's using all these cuss words. What's going on? And then he just backhands her like right onto the couch. Just backhands her right onto the couch. Starts calling her all kinds of stuff. Like, and they're just brawling and she's just like trying to protect her face. And he's just wailing on her. And I'm like terrified, you know, like I'm like, oh my God, you know. So I just remember being like, he is not about to kill my mama. If it's him or my mama, it's gonna be my mama, you know? So I ran to the kitchen. I grabbed a butcher's knife. I remember this. I didn't know it was a butcher's knife at the time. I just grabbed the biggest knife I could find out the kitchen. And I ran over to him and I was like, no, get away from my mom. And my brother pushes me. He like pushes me out the way. And he takes the knife and kind of throws it, you know, like, so I just get on my dad's back and I'm just like, get off of her, you know. And my brother is sitting on the couch just watching everything happen. And I'm like, you take the knife and you're not even trying to help. But you could see that he was traumatized. He just didn't want any more blood, any more hurt. Like, he was just like, no, that's pretty permanent, you know. So he's on the couch. He's like 6 or 7 at this time. We're literally like a year and a half together apart. So he'll be like, if he's 29, I'll be 28. Then he'll turn 30 and then I'll turn 29. Like that, you know? So that's how our birthday is. Like, that's how far apart we are. And yeah, so I'm just like, I'm like holding on to him, like just trying to like get him off of her. And he flings me, like he just grabs me off like I'm a cape or something, like a bug. He just grabs me and shoves me, and I hit my spine like into the little slender part of the door because the door was open. Remember, she opened the door. She saw that it was him, and she just walked away instead of just closing the door. But she walked away. And so the door was open. So during that time, before he started wailing her, that's what happened. She was telling him to leave. She was like, get out the house, James, leave. Like, I don't want you here. Go home. That's how it started. So as she had her hand on the door, opening it to tell him to go, he kind of just punches her. And then that's when the whole couch situation. He punches her, she falls down, and then he's just wailing on her. So that's how that happens. Because I was like, no, because I specifically remember him closing the door behind him when my brother opened it. But my mom opened it because she was trying to kick him out. Like, she was like, I ain't here for none of that. You ain't kissing me. You ain't doing none of that. Go home to your mistress. Go home to that beep. Right? And so that's what started that fight. But the fact that she was saying go home to her made me feel like it was my fault that all that happened. Because I was like, ooh, was I not supposed to say nothing? Like, ooh. So I feel like that was my fault, you know. And I specifically remember that. And it took me a long time to get over that. And I didn't want to tell my mama nothing that was going on in that house after that. Because I'm like, girl, no, if it's going to get you beat up like that, like, No, I ain't saying nothing. And we had many more events like that, And what was the worst for me was my dad never admitting it. Never admitting that till the day he died, he never admitted that he put his hands on my mom. And I'm like, you don't forget that. You don't forget seeing your parents fight like that. You don't forget waking up every morning seeing your mom black and blue. You don't forget those type of things, you know? And he would never admit it. Never admit any of it. But I had to call the police on my dad so many times. Like that day, and the one I was just telling you about, as soon as my back hit that door, I was out. I was like out for the count. I was like, oh, this hurt. Like I'm clearly too young to be involved in grown folks' business like this, you know? But so I crawled up next to my brother on the couch, and we just both crying. And then I hear her say, Tega, call the police. And so I did. I didn't know what else to do. I called the police, and I'm like trying to give them the address. He snatched the phone and just throws it across the room. And now I'm like, well, now what? I don't know how to put this phone back together. I'm like, I don't know what to do. Because we had, you know, back in the days, the phone has to be plugged into the wall, and you got this long extension cord. And it wasn't even a cordless phone. Like, it was attached. Everything had to be attached for it to work. And he just like ripped the phone, just threw it. And I was like, I don't know how to put this back together, you know? So I was just like crying and praying. And eventually the police did show up and took him to jail. But it was like, he had already did what he was gonna do to her. She was already like crying and bloody, trying to console us by the time they showed up. And then she had the nerve to say, oh, you don't gotta take him. No, take this man, take him now. Like, what you mean you don't gotta take him now? And so I do remember that very, very specifically, but I don't know if that was the time that he was in jail for like a year. If I could find the prison letters, I'll put some of those in there too. But I don't know if I had did that, if I put him in jail during that time, because he was violent to someone else. He like hit her, like she was on a bike or something. I don't remember what was going on. I heard this story from my mom and him before, but it just made me mad that he would admit to hitting another woman and being violent to her, but not admitting being violent to my mom, you know? Like, so I was just like, no. And so all of this, the fact that he didn't admit it, like, it caused me and my brother to just like stop talking to him for a while after their divorce. I was the one who told them to get a divorce, because I was like, girl, please, this ain't it. Like, this is not it. You need a divorce. And it's so crazy because my friend came to school crying about her parents being divorced. Like, oh, they're getting a divorce. I ain't gonna see my daddy as much, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, say what now? Come again? You know, like, I'm sorry to hear that, but somebody's tragedy can be your blessing, because that was a blessing for us. My mom got that divorce, we moved, and he never put his hands on her again, because she got a restraining order, she did all the things, and then they reconciled. And this was something that helped me forgive my dad as well, you know, because that was one thing that I didn't like. Once I realized everything that was going on, was like how messed up of a man my dad really was. You got 2 kids. Well, technically he had 4 boys and then me, right? And the first 2, I ain't never met. I don't even know. Never met them. The second one, apparently he lived with us for a little bit of time. That must have been when I was like too young to remember any of this. And then my brother, you know. So, and then it's me. And so I don't really have a big relationship with my brothers, but that's when I knew. I was like, he ain't got no family values. He's abusive. He's an alcoholic. He come in here trying to change up the rules and try to regulate when he ain't been here the whole time. He's like wants to just beat up my brother all the time. You know what I mean? Like, my brother 5-6 years old getting grown men whoopings. Why? Stuff like that. And And yeah, and so that was like my experience as a child going through that, because once we moved away from there, I didn't have any more experience with domestic violence till I got in my own domestic violence relationship. And I didn't realize it was domestic violence because I thought it looked one way. I thought he had to be punching and beating on you and all the things for it to be domestic violence. And that could not be further from the truth, okay? Domestic violence looks a lot more normal than you would think. What helped me with that, like I said, to deal with the trauma from growing up with that, was the reconciliation between him and my mom. You know, they actually started dating again, like, and doing the do, even though he was still with this other woman. So now he's cheating on her with my mom, like he was cheating, karma, right? But it was that I'm like, if she can forgive, then maybe I could forgive. So, because I had stopped talking to my dad for like years, like 2-3 years. Me and my brother stopped talking to him. And so finally decided to forgive him, and we started talking more and more. I had a crazy roommate relationship, just a mess. Like, I didn't even know people like this existed, okay? That's a whole nother story time. And I ended up leaving that situation to go move in with my dad for the summer while my husband was deployed. So that just strengthened our bond. I was able to forgive him for a lot of that trauma during that time. And then also when he was dealing with his lung cancer, and I was able to fly out for like almost a month and take him back and forth between chemo and stuff, and just really take care of him in that way, and just see him up, just living life as normal, even though he was dying. Just really helped me get a lot of that hate and unforgiveness out. But one of the things I really wanted him to do was just admit it and apologize for putting me through that trauma. And I never got that closure. But the first time that I was like speaking up about this, when God told me that he was going to heal me of this trauma, I was writing a post about this and like how I really wanted to work on that. But God told me, like, it is not through your earthly father that you are healed. It's through your heavenly father that you are healed. So you may not gotten your healing, what you thought was going to be your healing, by hearing the words. You experienced it. You lived it. Just because they're in denial does not mean you don't have to live in your truth. So because now I can live in my truth, I was able to like really let that go, and that burden was lifted off of me, where I do truly forgive him for this. Both of my parents are dead, and I was still holding on to all this trauma from all the stuff that I saw him do, and not being a good man, you know, like not being a good father figure to me and his kids, like the rest of his kids. So that was like one of those things, but I was able to forgive him for that. So if you're in a situation where you don't feel like reconciliation is a thing, then you need to go to your heavenly father and ask him to soften your heart for forgiveness. You don't never got to tell that person you forgive them, but if you could at least understand where they're coming from, then it will help you forgive them more. It doesn't make it an excuse or acceptable. It just helps you to understand. You can't understand and forgive. I mean, you can't forgive what you don't understand. My dad was an alcoholic growing up in the 70s, like the 60s. He was born in the 60s, growing up in the 70s, and 80s, and just all these trying times for black men. He was in the military. I'm not gonna say the branch, but he was in the military, and so that trauma and just all type of things that you don't realize that people go through because they're parents and they don't tell you all these things. And when you're a black man at that time, you don't talk about these things in the first place because you got to be strong. Like they try to portray black women now. Oh, you got to be strong. Don't talk about those things. You can no. We need to talk about it. We need to talk about these things. That way we can break these curses. We can break these chains. We can break these habits, and we can grow. How can our kids be the future if we can't deal with our past? So I just realized that I was dealing with parents who never dealt with their past, and they just trying to
just live and survive. Kind of how I felt like I was doing, how I still feel like I'm doing, but I'm getting on the other side of that, because now I know what it means to live and not what it means to survive. And so that's the whole point of this YouTube channel, is to help y'all do the same, to live and not survive. We got to get out of that survival mentality. We really got to get out of that survival mentality if we expect to advance in the kingdom, right? So we can't be out here beating on people just because we upset. We can't be out here punching on walls just because we upset, right? Okay, so that's what was with my dad. Okay, y'all, and I also, before I move on, I really want to point out that when my dad passed away, when my dad passed away, we had a really great relationship. Like, he was one of my best friends when he passed away. Okay, I just want to, like, we really did reconcile and have a really good relationship due to me staying with him for so long and just spending that time with him. And I feel like maybe that was the time that I needed with him, you know, like that, what I was missing my whole life kind of thing. You know, my brother got to stay with him and live with him for a while, but like I said, he was abusive to my brother, so he didn't really like it. It wasn't the best for him, so he would go back and forth between my dad and my mom. Like, you could tell my brother wanted better, but my dad just did not know how to give it to him without the abuse. So yeah. Okay, so yeah, so me and my dad had a good relationship before he passed, all that good stuff. Just so you know, like, it is possible, if that's what you truly want, if that's what you truly desire, is that kind of relationship, you can have it if the other person is willing. See, my dad was not willing until he was many, many years old. He wasn't willing to, well, maybe he never changed. Maybe I was just wasn't willing to accept him for who he was until all that time, because it's like, I can't get that time back. Here I am, grown, still worried about the stuff that, you know, happened when I was 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, 9 years old, you know, all those things. And then all the disappointments, you know, that could be another episode, when he didn't show up when he said he would, you know, those things. You're like, oh, you promised you're gonna be there, and then they're not there, type of situation. But that's not necessarily, it is abuse, actually. It is abuse. That is a form of abuse, where you're constantly telling your child you're going to do something and you don't show up. It's forming something inside of them that says they're not worthy, they're not worth your time, they're not worth it, because you can't keep your promises, because you don't want to be somewhere long enough, sober long enough, somewhere around, whatever. Because all his excuses were just stupid. Just stupid. Why he left my graduation early, a kid was kicking the back of his seat. Stand up! Go stand up in the back and wait for me to graduate then, if it was that irritating. Why drive all the way there and not even make sure I could see you? Why? Just to say, oh yeah, he was here and he left. I don't care if you was here and you left. You wasn't here till the end. I didn't get to see you. I didn't get to show you. You didn't. What? That is abuse. Okay, and that is a different form of abuse. I never realized how long these videos were going to be, because I never realized how heavy these conversations can get, how deep they can go. So this is just going to be a part 1. And then part 2 will be about, like, the psychological effects and traumas on everything that I talk about today, and how I work through it, because I can't do it all in one video. I literally can't do it all in one video. So what helped me heal from that trauma, from seeing that with my dad, was seeing my mom forgive him, living with him during the summer, and just seeing how normal of a person he is, seeing how much I can connect with him now, and how much we are alike, even though he didn't have such a big influence in my life in the home. We still did a lot of the same things. We still had a lot of the same, like, you really know, like, yes, I am your child because I got this from you and I have never seen you do it. You know what I mean? Like, I've never seen you behave this way. I know I got this from you because my mom don't behave this way. So it was just really great times to connect. Also going through cancer, just I had to watch both my parents deteriorate, and that was just not easy for me to see, like, these lively people just deteriorate and just go so fast. That was but it was just one of those times where I'm like, am I really going to hold this over his head forever? Like, he's about to be dead and gone, you know? And you forgive as much as you can, but you don't realize how much is still stored under all those things until they come up. But that's trauma, and that's also grief, because now you're grieving what you could have had, who they could have been, you know what I mean, the family you could have been. Also, something that's helping me with that process is journaling and therapy. All right, so I don't know how much I cut off, because y'all know when I rant. So I was talking about therapy. I'm in therapy. I journal. I spend time with my dad, and you have to, there's just a point of growth where you just have to realize where it does not serve you to be bitter. It does not serve you to sit there and wonder about all the things, like the coulda, woulda, shouldas. It does not serve you anymore. And then you have to be the bigger person where it's like, am I gonna hold on to this? What are you holding on? Both my parents are dead. My daddy been dead 5 years. 5 years this January, you know, but he been dead 5 years. My mom dead 5 years. And I'm holding on to this trauma. Why? It ain't gonna serve me. It ain't serving me now. It didn't serve me then. If I'm gonna hold on to this, I can't move forward. I can't. So, same with you, okay? So that's what's helping me heal. The main things now is journaling and therapy, and the decision to forgive. Even if you don't feel like forgiveness is not for them, it's for you. You don't even have to tell them that you forgive them. But if you understand where they're coming from, like they were just broken, they were just not in the place where they needed to be, they were just doing what they thought everybody was doing at the time, they were just out there on drugs, whatever. Like I said, it does not excuse their behavior, but at least you can understand that they weren't the person you thought that they should have been, and that's okay. Because how many times have you not been the person that you know you could have been? And you still here, you still love yourself, you still forgive yourself, and if you don't, you should. Because God still loves you and he still forgives you, even though you were not the person you know you could have been for him in his kingdom in that moment. So if you can't forgive someone else who you think did you so wrong and so dirty, God is not going to forgive you, and you're never going to be able to forgive yourself. You're never going to be able to look back and be like, dang, I messed up in this situation. If you're the type of person who's always right, you're wrong. Nobody is always right. So if you're like, I'm always right, everything is always right, I'm always in the right, I'm always the best, I'm always, that mentality is wrong. Because if you can never learn from somebody else, if you don't make any mistakes, the only person that didn't make a mistake was Jesus. And even then, he went to a synagogue at 12 years old and didn't tell his mama. That was a big mistake, because we didn't hear from him for another 18 years. You know what I mean? But did he sin? No. Going to a synagogue to preach about God and not telling your mama, that's not a sin. But it ain't what we feel a child should do. We don't feel like a 12-year-old should just be going off day's journey by yourself. You're supposed to stay with the family. No one's perfect. No one. Because we all have our own idea of perfect. And if your idea of perfect is you're the problem. You're the problem. Your idea of perfect should always be Jesus. He is the example. You're not the example. And you can never live up to his standards. Never. None of us can. That's why there's grace and there's mercy.
Okay, and so because I fear this video is already so long, I don't think I'm gonna go into my personal experience. I'm gonna go in depth into my personal experience in the next video, so it'll be a part 2. If you are in these situations, just know, you don't have to be. You don't have to. That's all I have to say. You don't have to be. They make you think you're so stuck that there's no way out. There's always a way out, okay? His name is Jesus. And even if you don't believe in Jesus, there's still a way out. There's still a way out. Nobody deserves to be treated like that. You were not here to be treated like that. Okay, so I'm so sorry I didn't get to mine. I am. But I promise this one is coming very soon. This first side was with my mom and dad, and then we're gonna go into my domestic violence, which was so much more than just beating. And I'm not saying just beating. I'm not minimizing that, because that's huge. That fucks. Like, I'm just rambling now. Okay. I love you guys. I do. These conversations are so crazy. I can't believe I'm talking about them sometimes, and I just appreciate y'all being here with me, listening to me, hearing me out. I hope that it blesses somebody to know that they are not alone, and yeah, I just cannot wait to see you in the next one so I can continue this conversation, because we're not done here. This is just a pause, and then we'll see the rest. Okay? So yes, thank you all again so much. Remember to like and subscribe. If this is your 3rd video, you already know what to do. If you don't know what to do because it's your 3rd video, that means you're supposed to subscribe. Okay? If you make it to video 3, then you already know you like what you see. Nobody goes back for 3rds if they don't like it. Okay. Bye. I'll see you all in the next one.